Hello and welcome to Much Ado About Nerd Things, your one-stop shop for anything and everything nerdy in pop culture. Today we're going to have a look at episode 3 of WandaVision in detail. Spoilers for the first 3 episodes of WandaVision, by the way, if that needed saying. Now let's start with the new theme song. I'm loving how they have a new decade-appropriate theme song with each new episode. The lyrics of the song can be interpreted as talking about pregnancy and building a family, but the first half of it is also quite meta in that it's kind of talking about the show itself. This is Marvel kind of flexing about the show they're making. And then it says, saying how WandaVision is a bit unusual compared to the usual Marvel fare. I mean, 3 episodes and there's no fight scene so far, right? The lyrics then go on to reassuring the fans. Because of 2020 being a trash fire year, this show ended up being the first thing we see of Phase 4 after the explosive ending of Phase 3. Phase 3 was hugely successful and popular, so there's a lot of expectation on what comes next to deliver. Marvel is trying to assure us that it's groovy and fun. We'll be the judge of that, Marvel. But yeah, so far it's pretty good. The rest of the lyrics, like I mentioned before, is about pregnancy and starting a family. One of which says, together 1 plus 1 is more than 2, which is talking about building a family together. But it's also a hint about the twins, because 1 plus 1, Wanda and Vision, makes more than 2. Not just twins, but twins who are more than what they seem. There are also other hints at it being twins as well. During the intro song, Vision is seen building a swing set with 2 swings, as well as a seesaw, that requires 2 people to play. It's almost as if Vision subconsciously knew they were having twins. Another hint is that the door to the house is different. It's a double door now. The first 2 houses both have single doors, so I think the update to double doors in this episode is deliberate. It is the same house. You can see the overall shape and size, and the structure is the same, and it have the same tree and garage. But they update the facade to be more era accurate to the sitcoms they pay homage to in the show. But in the context of the show itself, it also shows that this alternate reality is dreamlike and not stable. So that explains when we see Herb cutting through the wall, kinda dazed. The fence used to be lower in the previous episodes, which in the time frame of the show, since Vision mentions that Wanda has been pregnant for about 12 hours, it was like yesterday for them. This explains Herb cutting into the new wall like a glitch in the Matrix. There's also another clue as to the unstable shifting nature of this reality. What's Herb doing there trimming that fence like he lives there? That's Dottie and Phil's house. Vision and Wanda lives on number 2800, we see that in the first couple of episodes. We saw in the previous episode Wanda and Agnes walk over to that same house next door, number 2802, and Dottie come out of it, and granted with a bunch of other women as well, but Agnes says to her, "Your brothers are divine," which indicates that that's her house. Now I don't think Herb is supposed to be the gardener, he's not dressed like he's working. He could just be helping out, but I think it's a lot more likely a clue that this reality has shifted again and where everybody lives is not as stable as it seems. We then see Wanda and Vision argue over the name of the kid, Tommy or Billy, which later ended up being both. Now this show references a lot of the comics, chief among them the series Vision and the Scarlet Witch, where at some point in which they try to move into suburbia and fit in. And at the end of the series, they have twins named Thomas and William. The fact that they're going straight to their shortened names, Tommy and Billy, I think is significant here. I need to go into some heavy comic book bullshit here, so bear with me. Since Vision is not human, William and Thomas was conceived by Wanda using magic. She's a witch as well as a mutant in the comics, by the way, did I not mention that? Anyway, the magical energy she used to conceive her children turned out to be parts of the soul of Mephisto, which is kind of one of the Marvel's version of the devil. Predictably, that goes wrong, and Mephisto reabsorbed these pieces of his soul, killing the kids. Now, decades of real life later, and a whole lot of weird comic book stuff, 2 teenage heroes, Tommy and Billy, the superhero Wiccan and Speed, turned out to be reincarnation of those kids. Going straight to using the names Tommy and Billy seems to indicate to me that they're going to give us Wiccan and Speed, probably straight in this show, skipping the whole reincarnation plot. Especially considering Wiccan and Speed is pretty prolific members of the Young Avengers, and Marvel seem to be setting up the Young Avengers with a lot of the other shows bringing in other Young Avengers, like Miss Marvel show is happening, and Kate Bishop Hawkeye has been confirmed, and Cassie Lang has been recast to play a bigger role in the next Ant-Man movie. And I have a theory as to how they'll be doing that and who'll be playing them, which I'll elaborate in a theory video soon. Vision then says he chose the name Billy because of Shakespeare and says the quote,
"All the world's a stage, all the men and women merely play."
This, first of all, confirms that people who reference Shakespeare are cool. Second and more importantly, the quote described what I'm pretty sure is happening here in the show. Wanda, either due to the grief of losing Vision, or because of manipulation by outside malevolent forces, or more likely a combination of both, have constructed this stage subconsciously, and have trapped all these men and women as players of whatever role she sees fit to cast them in. When the appliances in the house go haywire, Vision and Wanda do the pose from the cover of issue 1 of Vision and the Scarlet Witch, the comic series I mentioned before. We then cut to Donnie and Paul's house, and Paul is reading a paper where the headline says 2 fire hydrants added on Main Street, which is just a real riveting headline. But the way he's holding the paper, it makes it say 2 fire hydra added on men, which I think is a reference to Hydra experimentations unleashing the twins Pietro and Wanda on mankind. This brings us to that little glitchy rewind bit with Vision. When Wanda have that conversation and Vision seems to start to question the parts of this world that doesn't quite add up, he skips back and pursues another line of thought and dialogue. Now, while I'm pretty sure Wanda did this, I don't think it's intentional. She looks sad and upset when Vision started down that line of thought, but she also looks slightly confused, and she did start that conversation that lead Vision down this line of thought. So I think she's in denial, and whilst subconsciously also knows something is wrong here, won't let herself fully admit it, and her powers are kicking in like a self-defense mechanism whenever the truth is nearly revealed to her. Wanda then called Vision a synthezoid.
Will the baby be human or synthezoid?
Which is what Vision is often called in the comics, but this is the first time he's being called one in the MCU. We then get another ad, just like in the other 2 episodes. This one has the lines, "When you want to escape and you don't want to go anywhere." This is directly referencing Wanda warping reality as a form of escapism from her grief and her loss. The ad then says Hydra Soak, discover the goddess within. I think this is a reference to Hydra experiments literally unlocking Wanda's godlike power that allow her to do this. Later, when Vision walked the Doctor out, he suddenly changed his mind about his vacations, but the word he uses are quite specific. He says,
"I don't think we'll get away after all. Small towns, you know, so hard to escape."
This is the start of the slow reveal in this episode that leads to suggestion that the people are likely trapped in here, and it leads straight into Vision's encounter with Agnes and Herb. They suggest that Geraldine is not who she seems, and even though he never ends up saying the word, Herb goes on to suggest that they are trapped in here. Now, I have more theories about who says what and why in this conversation, but in the interest of not making this video 30 minutes long, I'm gonna leave that for my theory video that should be coming out next week, which you should subscribe to this channel and keep an eye out for. There's a popular theory that Agnes is Agatha Harkness, a witch that teach Wanda to control her chaos magic and was involved in the storyline with Thomas and William. This is all but confirmed, but there's a few more clues that Agatha is Agatha Harkness in this episode. The main one is the necklace she's wearing in this episode is usually on her in different forms and resembles the brooch Agatha Harkness wears in the comics. In this episode, we get a pretty close up of it, and there seems to be 3 figures on it. I believe this is a reference to the triple goddess, a common figure in many mythology that represent femininity and usually depicted as 3 women. One of the earliest and well-known figure is the Greek goddess Hecate, which is often known as the goddess of witches. This is another clue that Agnes is probably the witch Agatha Harkness. Now back inside, Wanda mentioned Pietro, almost like she's suddenly remembered him. This prompts Geraldine to say,
He was killed by Ultron, wasn't he?
which gets an involuntary reaction from Wanda as a single tear rolled down her face. If you pay attention at that moment, her accent returns, and she turns on Geraldine. When she asks Geraldine who she is, Geraldine genuinely doesn't seem to know. Wanda then noticed that Geraldine's necklace is a sword, specifically the sword logo we've seen earlier on the helicopter and the beekeeper. Now we know from casting news that Geraldine is Monica Rambeau, the little girl we met in Captain Marvel that's all grown up, and she's probably now a sword agent who was trying to investigate what is happening here in little Pleasantville Wanda got constructed. When we cut to the scene, Geraldine is pushed out of the force field. The aspect ratio changed from the 4:3 sitcom television ratio to the cinematic 16:9. The force field she was pushed out of also looked like television static. We also see the signs for the town of Westview. We've seen it before in the flash in episode 1, but we see it more clearly in the extended scene in the trailer. This one is more modern than the old-timey one we see there, but it has the same 5 signs underneath. The first sign have a hand with graphic around it, which is how Wanda's powers are often visually represented in the comics. The last one says "Eyes on Your Street," which is a very common neighborhood watch slogan. It is also referencing the fact that Wanda's neighborhood is being observed by SWORD, especially with the eye being a direct reference to creepy surveillance situations like in Orwell's 1984. The sign itself says "Home, it's where you make it," which is kind of a pun since Wanda is literally making this place into a home with her reality-altering power. The name Westview could be directly referencing this is Wanda how literally viewed the West. Remember that Wanda is from Sokovia, and sitcoms she got to watch when she was young probably shaped Wanda's view of the West. It could also be a reference to Wanda and Vision being part of the West Coast Avengers when they had Thomas and Billy. They are not on the West Coast in this show though, they're in Jersey. We know this from the area code on the for sale sign in the first episode, and then the fact that they mentioned Hackensack in the second episode. When we zoom out from where Geraldine/Monica land in the real world, we see a temporary military encampment like the one we see S.H.I.E.L.D. use in Thor. Now, we know that this is probably SWORD, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s replacement. They have roadblocks and temporary spotlights set up shining on the perimeter. If we assume that this force field is a big circle, we can see from the perimeter that Wanda has taken over quite a large area, probably all of Westview, which according to that sign we saw earlier has a population of 3,892. The song they use as the episode wrap-up here is Daydream Believer by the Monkees. They don't start it from the beginning of the song, and the lyrics they use is carefully chosen to match the situation. The lyric says, "And I rise, wipe the sleep out of my eyes," as we see Geraldine look around at her reality, as if waking up from a dream. Then the chorus plays which says, "Cheer up sleepy G, oh what can it mean, that to a daydream believer and a homecoming queen." At this point in the actual song, it will go to the next verse. But here, the chorus is repeated for a second time, which showed deliberate emphasis.
I repeat things for emphasis. Emphasis!
I think this is because the lyrics perfectly sum up the end of Act 1 stakes of this show. We now know this is Wanda's dreamlike construct, which makes Vision, who's buying into it, the daydream believer. Wanda is the homecoming queen literally, she just made it home from being dead from the snap, and she is quite literally the queen of this reality. It sums up where we are now within the show. What does this SWORD agents invading the dreamlike reality can mean for the daydream believer and the homecoming queen?
Who knows what will happen?
So that was the first video ever on this channel, and if you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. Because this is a new channel, it would mean a lot to me to feel like I'm not yelling into a black void. I plan to post at least one video a week, so hit that little bell icon to get notified when new videos come out. And leave a comment. Tell me if you guys are enjoying WandaVision, or give me feedback on my video and what I can improve. Until next time, peace.